My wife and I bought this place in early 1980s, and it was the earliest house built here in 1917. Off to the left here is one of the rooms where I do thinking mainly, and it has an opportunity to put a bunch of artifacts of one sort and another in it, and a comfortable chair. So my kids, for reasons that are unclear, give me things that are weird. And so I have a whole variety of things, including a little monkey here with a set of clients. It's just for humor and entertainment. So it's a collection of rubbish. So we go 5'2", oh, what the fuck he can do as anybody sees my gown. Turn up down, no flapper, yes sir, one of those has anybody seen my gown. Could she love, could she coo, could she coo, has anybody seen my gown? There we are. Anyway, so that's a banjo uke. Well, my name is David Hardwick, and my position is Professor Emeritus of Pathology and Pediatrics and Special Advisor on Planning to the Dean in the Faculty of Medicine.
The Dr. H is
You heard about the little dog that ran through all of those trees out there saying birch, 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 birch. Did you hear about it? Well, it was the only bark it knew. I am what I appear to be. I have a goofy sense of humor. Everybody knows that. You know, I have a certain theatrical component, like playing piano and banjo ukes and sing-alongs with kids, but I'm not sure there's a whole lot that isn't perfectly obvious. Except maybe that I'm wearing 5 bow ties today. This is a bow tie with 4 bow ties on them.
It's almost, you know, I don't know anything about vaudeville, but there's something about that.
what you see isn't what you get.
The latest thing that has occurred to me has to do with the fact that we, as human beings, start out as unicellular organisms in a fluid setting. And then we create a system for circulatory washing of the cells that were washed otherwise in the intrauterine space. So most people think of us as embryos, or think of us as young babies, or think of us as adults. No. Not very long before, we were unicellular organisms, and therefore the evolution of those has to do with cycling of a whole variety of things. Now, if you take that logic and extend it, you would ask the question, well, why on earth then do people think that anything is linear and it keeps on going forever? Nothing in our origin is linear. Nothing in our operational daily activity is linear, nothing in etc. It's all cyclic, and it goes up, guess what? It goes back down. And when it goes up, it goes back down. Markets, social events, etc. Now, some of them may take 100 years, but that's just a long cycle. So that was the latest bit of entertainment. I have to write that down, and we'll write a paper on it, and from cell to society.
UBC is a young university serving the needs of a young and vigorous people. Every last citizen is affected by its policies and action and by the knowledge and skills of its graduates. And every last citizen is, in fact, a shareholder, a part owner. And this common ownership, this sharing, is without doubt what the founders had in mind when they chose for the university motto the 2 Latin words, Tuum Est. It is yours.
Why did I become a doctor is an interesting question. I have no idea at all. When I was going to university, starting in 1950, if I were describing myself at that time, it was an ignorant young fellow who had no idea at all what he wanted to be when he grew up, and still don't for that matter, that the places in the medical school were only open to veterans of the Second World War. And so the rest of the students didn't really apply. So they ran out of suitable candidates, so they let me in. And so not only did I go into medicine, but I also got very quickly involved in the research activity as well as being interested in teaching. When I interned, I took the option in going to Montreal, which I presumed would be an interesting experience, and it certainly was. I was then transited down to North Carolina to another primitive society, which was before Martin Luther King, and I experienced then the issues related to the Ku Klux Klan. And after that, I came back to Vancouver for a year and then went down to Los Angeles, which was a totally weird society full of movie actors and actresses. And so I think that that gave me a background in understanding that the world was occupied by a wide variety of different cultures, and that one had to empathize with them to understand why they were doing what they were doing, which seemed irrational to me, but made complete logic given the philosophic and cultural backgrounds that they came from.
Thinking back about the first time that I met Dr. Hardwick, I was a very green young medical student. And there was a person like David Hardwick who, again, seemed so worldly, so knowledgeable, so confident. He knew a lot, just about any topic that you could ask. He would have an opinion. And it was the kind of opinion where it was wise if you just paused for a moment and listened carefully, because he had something important to say.
The trouble with teaching and pathology, as well as everything else, is a lot of people don't get it. As teachers, they try to get you to memorize lists. So there's a huge difference between understanding the context and why it is the way it is, and then having to memorize the list of how it might be that way. And which one is simpler? Learn the context, and then figure out how to apply it, as opposed to memorizing a list, which is a bad idea.
Well, people who meet him now might not know that he still lectures to medical students. After all this time, they still want him back. What he has to say is still extremely relevant to medical students now. To me, that's really important.
He had that quality that is a rare quality, and that is the master teacher.
Well, I'll put them on the table. They're all my favorites. In pediatrics, if you wear a long tie, the kids wipe their nose on it or grab it and choke you. When they're wiping their nose on it, as I have said before, it creates the saying in pediatrics that you may think it's mucus, but it's not.
It was part of him standing out as a character. It was just that little difference that made him stand apart. My brother and I, Walter, the urban geographer, and I wore them since we were kids. I think they were probably reinforced by Lester Pearson, who was a prime minister that was egalitarian basically in Canada. So I think that he and I were both interested in and able to understand international and interpersonal and intersocial relationships. And the bow tie became a part of that. And some of them have international flags, which I find useful for when I go to international meetings as the international secretary. Sharks with briefcases when I'm dealing with lawyers. That particular style that's very Hardwickian, if there is such a thing. And some people are not quite sure how to take it because it's not cool, it's not hip, definitely not hip, but I get it because my pop was the same. When you're dealing with government bureaucrats, it's a disguise. They don't take people who wear a bow tie and a tweedy jacket seriously, particularly if they tell stupid jokes, which I do.
The ideal of personal initiative is so much a part of campus life that students have given a second meaning to the words tuum est. It is yours, yes, but also it is up to you.
I'm a contextual, tactical individual. Everybody pretty much knows that. If you're fighting a war, for example, you do not use strategy. You use tactics. How did I take the Department of Pathology, for which I was the head for 14 years, and take it from a mid-level research department at UBC up to the #2 research department at the whole of the University of British Columbia? And the answer is simple, and that was I hired only smart people.
I think Dr. Hardwick operates the way he himself is, in the sense that what he would like to have for himself, he wants to have for the people around him, whatever area of activity he's engaged in. So that would apply to running a department of pathology, the Children's Hospital, which of course he had a key role in developing, the distributed medical school is part of his legacy, the MSAC, which allows the students to stay connected, whether they're local or not. You know, he can look around himself and say, yeah, I had a hand in all that.
Now you might say, well, who gives a damn? And the answer is social interaction is important when people belong to a group, and that group is there for the purpose of well, saving lives, stamping out disease, and working for health of individuals. And so this facilitates interprofessional and facilitates interdisciplinary behaviors, which are important in medicine and will become increasingly important.
He's so far past his retirement date. He's self-funding. Like the work that he's doing today is completely self-funded. He does it because he absolutely loves it.
If you were to study his life, that dedication to medical students, to their well-being, to their socialization, and to their maturity, is something that he's always been either very outwardly or on some level, it really makes him tick.
Being involved in these rather broad conceptual activities, enabling the University of British Columbia to expand its interest, was worth doing and interesting, and I've been very fortunate, A, to have been offered the opportunity, and B, to have not started drooling, doing up my cardigan wrong, or gone on to soft foods yet.
So I think the biggest thing that I've learned from him is, try to touch base with like what really motivates you.
There's a worthwhile endeavor in looking at the bigger world, to getting out there, to exploring it, and to learning from it.
And I think that's a remarkable legacy to leave behind. I think it's a remarkable accomplishment. And I think he can, as he sort of winds down perhaps, although I can't imagine him winding down, he can look at that and say, yes, I've made a difference. And that's quite a remarkable thing to be able to say.
One thing that people would be surprised to find out about me is that I'm doing all of this for the purpose of serving rather than for making money or whatever. So why serve? Why not? If you look to see something that is going to help humankind, why not do it? You need to do things. So I'm a doer, I do things, and I get things done.
As graduates, you will bear a continuing responsibility to maintain these liberties and to use your knowledge and skills for the good not only of yourselves, but of your community and of humanity at large. That is the tradition of this university.
And perhaps through this knowledge, the motto on the university crest is richer in its meaning. Tuum est, a firm statement of ownership. It is yours. Tuum est, a challenge to all. It is up to you.
So that's tied, okay, everybody? And then I only have two hands, so I put one on my shoulder, and then I bend the other one into a bow. Now I take the other one around and tie it, and it's now basically tied. And then the rest of it is all mucking around, making it look lovely. That means that they're left slightly wonky, which means then you don't get people coming up and saying, oh, you tie your own bow tie? Of course I do, you idiot. But that's a different story.